A couple of our speakers are already here. Abhiraj, Imran, Cincy. Thanks for joining us today. We'll just wait a few more minutes. I think we're waiting for some of our other speakers to join in. So we'll just wait a couple of minutes and see how it goes. All right, stay tuned. We're waiting for other speakers. Maybe I don't know if anyone wants to share how's their week so far. It's Tuesday. Everyone had a nice weekend. Any football fan here? Liverpool fan, Man United fan, the news?
Not me. I think my weekend was great though.
What did you do?
I had some friends over and then we had a barbecue. So I think that was fun. I think it's always fun to just reconnect with people.
Okay.
How about you? You got to spend time with family, right?
Yeah, I didn't do much, to be honest. Yeah, but barbecue, when I was in the UK, it's something that's only reserved for summer. And the good thing about being in Singapore, around that region, is that you get to do barbecue like any time of the year. Well, except when it's raining, of course. But wasn't it raining the entire week in Singapore? Was it sunny over the weekend?
Yeah, it was quite bad. It was storming like on and off, but then our rooftop has a shelter, so it doesn't really matter.
Right.
Yeah, but the weather has been very, very erratic. Like yesterday and today were the only days in a week that it didn't rain. So it was a nice respite.
Right. So, who else are we waiting for, Dion? I mean, like, how many more? Are all the speakers here?
I think we have
I think you guys got to make Dr. Cincy speaker as well.
Sorry, I think we have about
So say that again, Imran.
4 more?
Dr. Cincy is here, and I think you guys got to make him a speaker as well.
Oh yeah, thanks for that.
Okay.
Actually, I already invited him. Cincy, maybe can you accept the speaker invite?
Yeah, well, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, Dion, do you want to get started first? Because I think some of our speakers are on transit as well, so they're joining in whatever time they have. So we just start off first because I think we got a great lineup today, and we got lots of speakers. So we will, we'll get them joining whenever they can. So Dion, do you want to get us started?
Okay, sure. We'll start. Okay, let's just start first. Hello, everyone again. Welcome to MX Talks, and thank you to all speakers and listeners for joining us today. My name is Dion.
And my name is Shin. We will be your co-host for today.
So, as the title says it, today's discussion will be a contentious one. Okay, I still find this weird to say. CEX versus DEX, which is better? And we're really excited for this morning's discussion because we have an excellent lineup of speakers, right?
Yeah, in fact, we have 7 speakers in total. Some of them, as I mentioned, will be coming in a bit later. So I think it's going to be a very interesting session, right? Just to clear up the air or Dion, CEX versus DEX, CEX as in centralized exchange versus decentralized exchange, which is better. And we'll give some time for the speakers to introduce themselves and voice out their opinion after this. But first, we'll just like to take a brief moment to introduce MarginX. Dion?
Yes. For all who don't know, MarginX is a DEX that's a bit like a DeFi convenience store. So whether you're looking to do some advanced trading or you're a beginner and just want to grow some passive income, we've got the solution for you. For more information, you can visit us at marginx.io.
Right. Thanks for that introduction, Dion. All right. So let's quickly start by having a quick round of introductions. Can we just have each of the speakers very briefly tell us what you do, and in 1 or 2 sentences, tell us which do you prefer, CEX or DEX, and why? Right. We'll just keep this a quick introduction first. We'll give you more time a little bit on, but for now, just 1 or 2 sentences. Tell us which do you prefer, CEX or DEX, and why. Can we start with I have Cincy.
Maybe we can start with Imran.
Yeah, we can start with Imran.
I think Cincy is yeah.
Hey guys.
Okay. So sorry. Yes, Imran, please go ahead.
Hey. Okay, thanks Dion, thanks Shin. Hi guys, my name is Imran. I'm the head of marketing for Kyber Network. Kyber Network, we run a decentralized exchange and aggregator. It's called KyberSwap. It's present on 14 chains at the moment. I think it's no surprise that I'm in camp decentralized exchange. I think the key reason why is I think the whole space and the whole reason people like me sign up for the space is for the principles of decentralization, the principles of human freedom, and decentralized exchanges represent a very, very big, important part of enabling those human freedoms with permissionless, trustless, non-custodial protocols. And happy to talk more about that later.
All right, thanks, Imran. Great introduction. Can we have Cincy to do the quick introductions next?
Hi guys, I'm the co-founder and CEO of CoinUT, which is a Singapore-based crypto exchange that is applying for license in Singapore, Canada, and Switzerland. Thanks.
So, Cincy, do you want to quickly also mention like CEX or DEX, which one do you prefer, and 1 or 2 sentences why? Just very quickly.
Well, I'm running a centralized exchange, so I know about this, and I think it has a lot of advantages compared with DEX because of the easy to useness and a lot of other factors.
Okay. All right.
Thank you. Thanks, Cincy. Moving on, we'd like to hear from Abhitej, ecosystem and marketing lead at Persistence.
Hello everyone, this is Abhitej. I lead the ecosystem and marketing of Persistence. Persistence is our layer 1 focus, especially on liquid staked assets. I would prefer DEXs, especially after the events of 2022. We have seen how important it is to have non-custodial solutions and have the complete control over our assets. So DEXs, it does.
Great. Okay, so we already got a proponent for DEX. We got a proponent for CEX. This is going to gear up for an interesting debate. I'm looking forward to that. Not that you guys really have to engage in the debate, but I think like exchange of different ideas is great as well. Dion, do we have other speakers coming in, or are we good to start off? Go to the main.
Let's start first because I think some of them are new.
Sure. All right. Okay, so now, I mean, we heard some of our speakers, they come from a CEX background, they come from a DEX background, so they have their own preferences. So I want to get into the meat of the discussion right now, right? Like, comparing yourself, either you are a CEX or a DEX proponent, why would you think, what is the advantages of a CEX over a DEX or vice versa? Does any one of the speakers here want to start off with that? Like I know you might be coming from a DEX background or a CEX background, but why do you think DEX is better? I mean, is it the user experience? Is it because of the speed? Because of the security? I mean, like very briefly, I think one of our speakers talked about non-custodial. Do you think that is a game changer, or so on and so forth? So I'm just going to leave it to the speaker to flash this out. Does any speaker here wants to start off first, or if not, I'll just Sure. Is that Imran? Yep.
I think it's me. So I come from team DEX, right? But like if I were to be more nuanced, I think at the end of the day, all the various platforms and technologies provide choice, right? So I don't think anyone here would conclude that there would in the future only be CEX or only be DEX. I think it's probably a logical conclusion that you have a mixture of both. If you look at the reality of the space right now, maybe about 95% of crypto volume is within the central exchanges, 5% from the DEXs. The DEXs started from zero maybe a couple of years ago. And I think that's really a function of coming out from the gate and actually growing pretty fast together with the market. So if you look at why the DEX volumes are still very low compared to the central exchange, I think Dr. Sinzi has pretty much hit it on the head with regards to the simplicity of it. The idea that if I'm coming in from Web 2, I don't actually really need to understand or learn a new user journey in order to use more central exchanges. Whatever I know, if I use Grab or Uber or iBanking account, I probably can use a central exchange without much of a hitch. And I think that's not really the case yet for decentralized exchange and DeFi in general. So there are definitely more education and more steps and user friction in order to go to decentralized exchange. But let's talk about the flip side, right? Why decentralized exchange in the first place? And I think if you look at the whole spirit of it, it's about autonomy. Autonomy means as a human being, I can choose what to do with my private data. I can choose what to do with my assets. I can choose how I hold my assets. I can choose what to do with my assets. And that's what decentralized exchanges allow, right? So, for example, on KyberSwap, you can swap maybe about 20,000 plus tokens on 14 chains today. I think most importantly, the idea that it is non-custodial, which means I hold my own assets. No one holds it for me. I'm not providing it in trust to any entity. I think that's a big deal. I think that one of the other speakers alluded to this in the past year with regards to the centralization failures of platforms like FTX, Celsius, Voyager. But it's not new, right? Like you have Mt. Gox failing and many other centralization failures many years over the many years that we've had the whole crypto space up. And I think the question will be how many times will we let centralization fail us before we really look at decentralization as a real viable, logical way forward in terms of holding our assets in a trustless way. I think the last thing that I'd like to mention is that the whole spirit of crypto, blockchain, decentralization is allowing people like you and I to participate in the economy. And what this means is that on decentralized exchanges, for example, liquidity is not primarily provided by market makers. Liquidity is primarily provided by users like you and I. So you and I can $100 or with $1,000 can participate in this economy. We can contribute to this economy. We can be a participant in this economy. We can have a say in this economy, and we can benefit from this economy. And you don't have that. You can't be a market maker on central exchanges, right? So it's kind of like whatever we felt is the worst of traditional finance. When we go to central exchanges, we're actually just replicating the same things of Web 2 is replicating the same things of traditional finance that we inherently don't like or don't want. And while there are the advantages of this user experiences and ease of use, to what end and what is really the cost of it? And I think if we are really here to advance human freedoms, I think decentralized exchanges have to be the way to go. And of course, we're not anywhere close to where we should be in terms of user experience, but I think that's where the whole industry and builders here today have a big job to do over the next few years.
Thanks, Imran. That's really good insight. And I don't mean to put Cincy in the limelight, but in view of Imran's idea that CEXs have let us down in the past, I just want to take what's Cincy's view on this one, CEX versus DEX. What's your view on this?
Well, so essentially we are all providing financial services for customers, right? Whether it's a DEX or CEX. But whenever we talk about services, it's always going to be a process involving human labors, I think. Right. So DEX is not going to work without the humans working at the back. And when customers don't know how to use a DEX, you have to tell them how to do that. So you have to provide customer services. And there are also a lot of other related things that needs to be done by humans. So essentially, I don't see that DEX and CEX are so different from each other. And I think DEX is providing a technological infrastructure for the financial services, right? And CEX is also using a lot of technologies as well, but it takes more human involvement in the process. I guess that's the key difference. and essentially they will all merge into one, I think. Yeah, essentially we're just using the most efficient technology to reduce the cost and to increase the efficiency of the entire service. Right. And for now, I think DEX, seems to be more secure than CEX because it does not provide the custodian service like the CEX, and at the back it tries to lend out the cryptos, and then they may be hacked, and then the CEX will not just function. Well, so it seems like CEX is more vulnerable to human errors, but I guess that's just a temporary, because regulators come in, they will just force all these CEX to have much better policies internally and to ensure that the funds of the customers are safe. I think eventually it's going to be very similar to banks, and it's very hard for a bank to get hacked, right? So I guess eventually CEX should be okay.
Okay, thanks so much, Xingxi. I was wondering, because Avitesh, you're the ecosystem lead, right? And probably you would be quite attuned to maybe what the users like, what they want in their user experience. When Xingxi was saying that users really like customer service and DEXs don't. But at the same time, Avitesh, you're on the DEX camp. So maybe you can give us a bit more insight to what you personally feel about whether CEX or DEX is better for users and for you yourself.
Yep. Great points by both Lindsay and Imran. And I think so what Imran alluded to is a great point, where it's about the familiarity is there with CEXs, right? So a lot of users who have been using a lot of financial products in the traditional space, when they come to crypto, they find the centralized exchanges to be more familiar with setup, with how they look, how to use those. And that's the reason why they are a good onboarding platform for new users coming in. Other is the bridge between traditional finance and crypto becomes easier because you can bring your assets from a bank or other on-ramp platforms, which are a little difficult when it comes to DEXs, because most of the DEXs require to bridge the assets from a centralized exchange. So we see centralized exchanges to be the biggest inflow of new users coming in, capital coming in. But when we really look where we want to reach, we are seeing DEX is getting more and more sophisticated. DEX is solving these problems. And I think so from a user perspective, DEXs are a bigger opportunity because DEXs are now providing a lot more ability to play with your assets, where you have only limited option on a centralized exchange. On a DEX is actually pushing the limits of how the interaction can happen, whether it is both from new projects coming in or whether it's for the users. So now users can go and provide liquidity in pools, get yield on those pools, and then you have different options to participate in auctions permissionlessly, right? So whether on a centralized exchange, if you have to participate in IOU, you have you have cap of how much you can participate in. You will have to prove to participate in the auction, whereas there are very good ways to participate in token sales, such as like there are LBP models, or you can have you can participate when a new pool comes in, and this is all permissionless. The other thing is now users are getting more and more voice into how the exchange experience should look like. So governance participation is becoming a big element and especially with now that users are getting more active about how their assets should be secure, how their assets should be utilized, how their assets, new options that should be given to their assets. And that we have seen great way with Curve giving an option, and then so many different use cases coming around the like weightage or gauges that how Curve has provided, and similarly now DEXs are providing new options. So this has given this new freedom to users, which they haven't had in traditional space, which they haven't had in centralized exchanges, that now they can drive the new financial innovation. And this is where we're seeing more and more. And I agree that centralized exchanges have had better experience, but now we are seeing as things are advancing, the experience is getting like better and better, and the gap between how I think so the most important thing is the transaction speed, TPS, is improving on chain as well. And then you have chains that are specifically coming for trading experience. Like, for example, Say is a great example of that. You have chains that are only focused on DEX. A great example of that is Osmosis. And you have other bigger applications that are moving to more like specialized layer one, such as DYDX, where they are creating their own chain. And this will all improve the experience even further. And we will see this, like, eventually over time, we will see that the performance gap between the centralized exchanges and decentralized exchanges will become very, very, like, it will start getting blurred, and then people in the background don't even need to know whether it's a DEX or SEX. So you can have interfaces that can provide both options.
Okay, that's very interesting. Thank you, Abhitesh. I hear you when you say that DEXs provide more options for users. And I wanted to take this chance to introduce Pankaj, who has joined us. He runs a crypto derivatives exchange, and because there are many options for his users, I'm guessing he's on the centralized exchange view, but I'm going to let him introduce himself, and also Pankaj, let us know SEX or DEX, which camp are you on?
Sure, thanks. Thank you, host, for giving me the mic. Thanks everyone who's listening. So guys, my name is Pankaj. I am co-founder at Delta Exchange. We are a derivatives exchange. We focus largely on options. We are the second largest options exchange. We do about $200 million of notional is traded on our exchange every day in options. And this has been, our focus area. We are a completely centralized exchange. And let me give you some points on how we are thinking about this. This is definitely a very intriguing topic and a debate on which way, the consumer is going to lean, which way the industry is going to lean, which way the regulators are going to lean, and so on and so forth. I have a couple of points here. And first one that I would like to make is, see, from a customer point of view, customer ultimately wants to trade. They don't really care if it's a centralized or a decentralized exchange. They are looking to solve their problems. They are not in an ideological battle on what is better. So solutions have to be such that the core problems are solved. Now, the events of November last year, what do they highlight? They highlight that custody is a big problem. Custody is a big problem. When you sit on customer funds, there should be a proper way of handling those and not be mixed with funds. There should be methods for safekeeping of them, and so on and so forth. So in this regard, you have to have systems which give you transparency on how customer funds are held. But what is ultimately the customer there to do? Customer is ultimately there to trade, right? Since they are ultimately there to trade, you have to give a very smooth and a good trading experience. Now, let's take our example. We are running an options exchange. For every 1 unit of price change in the underlying, the price of the option can change 100 units. And that is very important because the margin calculation can be very different. So every time the price changes, we want to immediately update the margin requirement. And this is where the speed of the chain becomes super important. So now if we marry these 2 points, what you realize is ultimately is okay with the solution where they get fast speed of execution, but they still get a good visibility on custody of their funds. In this debate of centralized versus decentralized, I think we somehow, take a stance that everything should be centralized or everything should be decentralized. There is a middle ground here where you can decentralize the custody while at the same time keep the trading experience centralized. So for example, a customer brings in money, that money is transferred to a smart contract. Here the smart contract becomes the custodian. Everybody has complete visibility of their funds. And through that smart contract, that money is then, sent to a margin wallet, which is then used to which is then used as a margin for the customer's position. And every time there is a settlement cycle, like 24-hour or 6-hour settlement cycle, in which the P&L of the customer is transferred to that. This solves a lot of problem from a customer's point of view. This solves the problem that they get good visibility on their funds. This solves the problem that they get speed of execution. This solves the KYC problem that you're not doing business with elements which are unidentified. This solves AML problem. This solves a lot of problems. So the way we are thinking is, in the value chain of the exchange, you don't need to decentralize everything. Some elements can be decentralized while other can remain centralized. And the reason for this is not because we like it that way. It's more because there are still issues on the decentralized side which are very difficult to solve at the current state. For example, the options example, that the price change is so big that, you know, between two blocks, the customer can get liquidated. There can be the time between two blocks is a big bottleneck in options, much more as compared to what it is in spot or in futures. Second thing is, if you're talking about high frequency trading happens by the name of it. There are too many trades that are happening. If there are too many trades, then there'll be too much money that is required on chain. There'll be too much transaction cost. So transaction costs need to go down with volume. They cannot linearly scale with volume on an entity level, on the client level. So if a particular client is doing more transactions, they will ask for lesser and lesser cost. This is very difficult to solve in the decentralized space, unless you aggregate transactions. So again, it's a big gap area. The current state of DeFi, at least till last year, if you check the data, you will see that a lot of big transactions happen on DeFi. So the real business that went to DeFi was less of, you know, small trades and more of bigger trades. Just one second.
Okay. Well, maybe
Sorry.
I can chime in.
Yeah. So,
yeah. Sorry, Pankaj. Okay.
So if you see data from Uniswap, and we looked at some of that data, we found that the average size per trade on Uniswap is very high as compared to Binance. So every trade, the quantity traded on Uniswap is better. So if you are a big trader, you can, and if you're trading infrequent trading, you can afford DeFi. But for a smaller trade, again, DeFi was, at least in the last bull run, was very expensive. So yes, the innovation that teams are doing on reducing the cost, super important. The model that something similar to what DEX has is very important. Then, but the problem remains is that we just don't have to solve one of these. We have to solve all of them. Like, it should be low cost. The cost should reduce per entity with volume. It should be fast to be able for this to margin you appropriately. And ultimately, it should give you secure custody environment. Now, we think that a blend of central and decentral here can solve a lot of these problems. So the way we are thinking about it is, maybe the solution is not decentralized trading. Maybe the solution is centralized custody, because that solves a lot of these problems. You decentralize custody, you give customers the comfort, and you keep trading centralized. I anyways think that as space gets more and more mature, you will have to have an environment which is more and more, so you will have an environment which is more and more scrutinized, and every participant will need some sort of identification procedure. So this is the way we are thinking about it, that yes, decentralized trading is an angle, but to solve problems of high speed trading and to solve problems of trading a smaller quantity and transaction, you will have to, maybe have to think about a mix of central and decentral.
Thanks, Pankaj. I think, Pankaj, I think we will come back to you, circle back to you in a while. I think your idea about this hybrid version of exchange, I think that's very interesting, right? Because I think so far you're the only speaker that mentioned this. That the way forward is not a pure DEX or pure CEX, but instead a hybrid of all these things, getting the best of both worlds, an exchange that has the best of both worlds, having a non-custodial side of things being decentralized, and yet the order engine and trade engine is actually centralized. So I'll come back to that in a bit later. But I just want to take this opportunity to introduce another of our speakers who have just joined. We have Sebastian here. And I just want to give Sebastian an opportunity to very quickly introduce himself and talk about what are his thoughts about DEX versus CEX in the battle of DEX versus CEX. In particular, I know that Sebastian is an expert on data privacy, so maybe feel free to talk more about DEX versus CEX from a data privacy point of view if you can. But but any other opinion is fine as well. Sebastian, you there?
Yeah, thank you, Shin, for this introduction, and sorry for joining late. So I think it's a very interesting point to highlight the differences between centralized and decentralized exchanges, and I think we've seen a lot of drama playing out at the second half of the last cycle, and I think the indications on that side point very clearly: centralized infrastructure cannot be trusted, right? So especially, and there was a nice distinction being made before, especially centralized custody. In my eyes, centralized custody is forever gone. Anybody who right now has their funds on a centralized custodian, on a centralized exchange, I hope you're ready to lose all that money. Like every single way, every single Bitcoin, every single ETH that you have, every single USDT that you right now have on a centralized exchange, please plan to never see that money ever again. If you don't like that thought, get yourself a hardware wallet right now and inform yourself how to securely back it up and secure it. So that's my first thing that I just want to get out of the way. And yeah, the other thing from a data privacy perspective, theoretically things point to decentralized exchanges, right? So I like decentralized exchanges, but the more important, bigger picture than just thinking about privacy to me is thinking about what are we doing here? What are we doing with these platforms? In my eyes, it is about creating credibly neutral payment rails on top of which we can run the world's commerce and trade infrastructure. It's all about credibly neutral systems. If that is not the goal, if somebody is just building a trading venue that is, aiming at efficiencies, that's just a different approach. And if you simply aim for efficiencies, you should trade on a venue that hosts a database. In the crypto world, we're sometimes dunking too much on databases. Databases are great technologies. If you're interested in trading more efficiently, faster, go to centralized trading venues and do not even think about decentralized trading venues. But if you're actually interested in building neutral payment rails and trading venues, then crypto is the only answer. There's absolutely no way you can have centralized components in a world that seeks to be more neutral and under less scrutiny than what we've seen previously. And it's amazing. That is the part of the crypto world that I'm working towards. And if we think about these credibly neutral platforms, what do they require? They obviously require self-custody. They require that you are in control, which means decentralization, but they also require that nobody spies on you. And here it actually gets kind of tricky because in the current, as I would sometimes say, naive way of how we decentralize things, many pseudo-decentralized trading exchanges are actually very centralized. So for example, Uniswap, right? So we think about Uniswap as a decentralized exchange. Well, the fact of the truth is that if you visit app.uniswap.org, first of all, it ends on a .org domain. Is the .org domain management decentralized? No, it's not, right? So then Uniswap makes you believe that they have an IPFS deployment, right? So you can go on an IPFS version of Uniswap and trade there. But even that one is actually not decentralized at all. So even the IPFS deployment of Uniswap accesses api.uniswap.org in order to facilitate your trades. So while it's theoretically possible to use Uniswap in a decentralized fashion, nobody does right now. And that's a problem because right now Uniswap, who operates the servers that you use to use this canonical interfaces of Uniswap, see a whole lot about you and can censor you from using that platform. And that's a problem that I think we need to solve on our path to reach credibly neutral systems, which are facilitated by decentralized exchanges and privacy. And yeah, to finish the introduction on my end, that's what we are working on at Hopper. I'm founder of Hopper, which is privacy infrastructure to send data privately. And you can imagine it like a more private version of a VPN or a more private version, even more private version of Tor. And on top of that infrastructure, we've just been launching RPCH. So you can visit rpch.net, which is the first truly private RPC provider solving exactly the problem that I just mentioned. We want to basically provide something like Infura in a way that cannot spy on you, cannot track your IP addresses, cannot link your Ethereum addresses to your IP address and link multiple Ethereum accounts. That's what we're after. Sorry for a bit of a lengthy introduction, but I wanted to connect it to this topic here.
No problem, Sebastian. I think that was really good. I did a quick search on your background. Sorry, so much for privacy, but I think you did. You have a PhD in microtechnology in biotech, and it's not so much different from what I did when I was at. You did that ETS Zurich. I did something similar at Cambridge as well. So yeah, we'll take that topic offline. Maybe some catch up over coffee or something.
I'd love to.
But I think your thoughts are is very interesting. You start off by saying that if you want to lose all your money, then just put your trust in the centralized exchange. I'm sure a lot of speakers out there might disagree with that, because we have some speakers here who has actually built a CEX. But I just want to put it in the context, and I want to give Sebastian a chance for you to answer this first. So from my point of view, some of the speakers have mentioned that regulatory might actually help. Regulation might come in and actually help control CEX be more responsible, and that might solve some of the problems. And I think Pankaj, our earlier speaker, also mentioned that he proposed a hybrid approach where you have the non-custodial wallets, which is the decentralized portion, but you still have the centralized portion of the trading engine, which will actually compensate for the user experience. So I just want to very quickly hear from you. Do you think that actually solved the problem that you just mentioned earlier?
Yeah, so basically the execution could be centralized. And the thing is actually, what does that mean? So on what infrastructure can we actually settle today? So if we look at the most advanced decentralized exchanges, I'm thinking on the direction of, for example, CowSwap, is very interesting actually. Because if you think about it, what happens at CowSwap, for the ones who don't know it, it is an exchange that seems like Uniswap, where you close your intent to trade. And then there's basically a bunch of solvers which are trying to give the best offer. So in a way, you could say it's a decentralized venue where you have a kind of set of each individually centralized actors or agents, which you could maybe call a trade engine in and by itself, to play together. So something like this is in my eyes the future. Now, do you call this hybrid? I don't know. What is important to me is an equal playing field. There's no one single operator who can operate in a permission fashion this trade engine. It's open for all. So something like this, in my eyes, is the future. And if there's any centralized element remaining, such as the trade engine, you can always extract value from users by front running, by censorship, and so on. And that is one reason why I believe in permissionless systems, permissionless innovation, and solutions such as CowSwap. I bet there's a whole lot more coming up. There's been an extremely fascinating proposal being made by Flashbots, even though it's not fully fleshed out yet. It's called Suave, which generalizes the concept of CowSwap. So yeah, I do believe in permissionless systems. Maybe I was evading your question a little bit, but that's the direction I see this heading, and I'm a firm believer of permissionless systems and innovation.
Great, thanks for that. I'm just going to very quickly pivot to Arbitage in a moment, because I think he needs to drop off a little bit earlier. But before that, I just want to say that I actually kind of agree with what Sebastian said. And, I myself, being the core contributor of MarginX.io, I was there at the Singapore FinTech Festival last year. And, a lot of people came by our booth and asked us, what is MarginX is a DEX, but there are a lot of DEXs out there. What's the difference? And I actually repeated this answer many, many times. A lot of DEXs out there claims to be DEXs, but actually very few DEXs are fully decentralized. And we all know that exchanges actually consist of a lot of different components. And more often than not, whenever people decentralize just one component of all the tens of thousands of components, they just claim themselves to be decentralized exchange. Because to do a truly decentralized exchange, it's actually a non-trivial job. It takes a lot of technical expertise. So for example, at MarginX, we actually decentralize not only just the wallet bit, but also the order matching engine bit, the trading engine bit. Took quite a while to build that, and even then, to Sebastian's point, maybe we are not 100% decentralized. There's perhaps a portion of it that's still centralized, but I guess we are still working towards there, and that's why we have this very good topic today about DEX versus CEX, and the point I think that's very important made out here is that the line is sometimes not that clear that truly DEX and there's no centralized opponent, or the other side that you are truly centralized and there's completely no decentralized option. It's never so clear cut. The lines are sometimes blurred away. I think that's a very important point to know, audience. So yeah, very quickly to you, Abhitej, do you have anything to add on to the points that have been made by other speakers so far? Abhitej?
Yeah, I think Mr. Bisson brought a very important point where it's like the infrastructure need to be decentralized as well. What we are looking at is when we talk about decentralization has to be end-to-end decentralization. And growing that, like looking at that, if you look at Cosmos ecosystem, where like I particularly come from, we've seen that these problems are being solved one at a time. So you have specialized chains that provide these solutions, and then you can build your stack on top of it. For example, you can use Akash network to host your exchange interface, exchange trading engines, and top of like Akash's infrastructure providing. So that is one part that is very interesting and needs to be more and more like educated to people as well. So for example, if most of your exchange is hosting everything on a centralized server and it goes down, essentially everything goes down. And we have seen these problems becoming more and more prevalent with outages. And similarly, the other thing which Pankaj was mentioning about hybrid model, to a great extent, it is again enhancement in user experience. But I think so what we are truly looking at as like crypto enthusiasts, or why each one of us is in crypto, is looking for the autonomy that is required to push the limits of finance. And if still the control of decision making is in the hands of a certain individuals or a certain entity, then it still becomes very limiting of like what can be done. So what we are seeing in decentralized exchanges is that limits being pushed in terms of how those assets can be utilized and how do I have the autonomy to use my assets. For example, now you have, when you LP your assets into a decentralized exchange, what you can do beyond with LP tokens is a fascinating venue. And that's what makes decentralized exchanges powerful. Yes, they're still very small in terms of trading volume, but that has increased by the day. And what we are seeing is more of now awareness for users, and specifically when we talk about regulations coming in, we're also talking about a lot of censorship. Now, how to counter that censorship is also important, because it beats the core of what we are trying to do here, is that accessibility for all. Accessibility for all goes to us as soon as we say we're going to have like censorship. So we need to have more and more censorship resistant solutions. We need to have more and more decentralized solutions, which are end to end, from infrastructure to end, like your interface, everything is centralized. We need to have more, I think so, is one of the very important aspects which misses when we talk about what is better and what like users need to be. And that sort of disclaimer needs to come from both the centralized exchanges as well as decentralized exchanges. From centralized exchanges in terms of when they custody assets, in what way they're custodying assets, where are they using assets, which platforms they are lending to, what is the risk parameters of those, and then allow users to make the decision. Because I think so this is a big part where centralized exchanges completely wash off the responsibility in providing that when a user is coming onto the platform. If FTX provided a complete disclaimer, okay, all your assets are being like landed out to these platforms, this is what the current holding is, I don't think so a lot of users would have gone to FTX and landed, like put their assets on there, knowing what the state of FTX is. And similarly, like a decentralized exchange needs to give disclaimer about different aspects which are more prevalent on decentralized exchanges. For example, what has been the average impermanent loss on a certain pool when you're putting in your assets, and or like what is the slippage more prevalently. And this is what will allow users to make decisions, because what we are talking about here are 99% of users, not 1% of users, which are very savvy and understand how the trading happens, understand how these exchanges work. But we're talking about these 99% of users that come in based on whatever they're seeing around or whatever the trend they're seeing. And that's where I think so that responsibility lies in terms of education and providing that information.
Thanks so much, Abhitesh. Well, the argument was very detailed, and that was very insightful as well. With this, I wanted to hear what Cincy has to say, since Cincy, you're obviously very in the centralized exchange camp, yet at the same time, just now you were providing both advantages and disadvantages. And after hearing what the speakers have to say about whether we should go with a hybrid model or whether we should still stick to fully decentralized, Cincy, maybe you can take this time to rebut them a bit. Give your opinion.
Well, okay. Yeah. Well, we don't focus on building technologies, although we also build technologies. We focus on providing the best services and the user experiences for the customers, because that's what they need, right? They don't really care about the technologies underlying what Peng just said. Yeah. So from this point of view, well, I don't see that there is such a conflict between CEX and the DEX. You guys focus on building cool technologies. We focus on how to use them to serve our customers better, right? But I do disagree that someone is saying, oh, CEX, if you put MarginX with a custodian service, then you should be prepared for losing that. Yeah, as I say, CEX has higher risk than DEX if the people involved is not really following the rules. Yeah, that's possible. And but as I say, regulation, if a regulation comes down and force those companies to enforce a set of rigid rules, then it's going to function like a bank. You don't worry about bank being stolen, right? Or don't be stolen. But most of the banks are doing pretty well. Yeah, rules are built by humans, and I think that's part of the civilization. It works, right? It's not something really broken. Like, even if you build DEX, you still have to follow some rules, right? Not everything in the DEX is decentralized. It can be marketing, it can be sales, it can be customer services. All this need to be done by humans, and they have to follow the DEX, right? If some part of the process is broken, still the DEX will not function, right? So essentially, I think, but DEX are cool technologies. DEX will provide much better services for customers.
Am I allowed to jump in?
Sure.
Yes,
or is there any other
sure.
decentralization maximalist? Like, okay, I disagree, obviously. So the one thing is, well, there's, obviously some good people behind centralized exchanges with no way of verifying that trust, right? So there's no way of verifying the trust. And I would say, the first thing I've been trading on decentralized exchanges, the very first one I traded on was called Ether Delta. And it was actually pretty crappy compared to today's standards. I think I was in like 2017 or so. It was the first order book based exchange on Ethereum that was bound to not really work, but fair enough. But the first thing that surprised me was actually the UX. The UX of a 2017 style decentralized exchange was way better than any centralized exchanges today, for a very simple reason. I go on the website and I clicked and I saw like a trading interface, and I was confused. I was super confused because I was coming there on this website for the very first time, and I was looking for this button that's called register. And I was prepared to do KYC and shit. And I understood that, there was no KYC on that page. There was no KYC, and I could just trade. There was not even a login button. And that was so shocking to me. And it showed me for the first time, decentralized exchanges have already way better UX than any centralized financial business can ever offer. The onboarding experience is just so incredibly painful. Whereas if you go on Uniswap, if you go on CowSwap, if you go on MarginX or any decentralized, truly decentralized exchanges, you can just trade ahead. So that's amazing. And I think my reason why I think that decentralized exchanges will prevail is UX. Like, I agree that people don't care if it's centralized or decentralized, but by definition, there's no way for centralized exchanges to offer the UX of decentralized trading venues.
So I'd love to jump in as well.
Yes, I was just about to.
I know, I couldn't hold it in anymore.
Go ahead.
Actually, I think everyone brings very good points to the table, right? So like, if you look at what Pankaj and Cincy says, it's really all about the user experience, the fact that users are agnostic in most cases, most users are agnostic to the platform, whether it's decentralized or not, but beholden to the idea of what is the platform that can give me the fastest, most seamless exchange experience, right? So I think it's a question of trade-offs, because they cannot assume that if I go to a central exchange, it is the same risk profile using this central exchange and holding my assets there as it is with my national bank, which have very detailed audits, very secure systems, and a government that will bail them out. Like, the risk profile of a central exchange is completely different, and they need to understand when they are participating with a centralized entity, especially within a crypto exchange, the huge difference in the risk profile of that versus their digital banking, even if from a prima facie level, it seems the same. I'm obviously from a decentralization maxi camp. In fact, Kyber Network was probably one of the first interfaces, back to Sebastian's point, that you could swap on chain. And we started out
and very good one, in fact. Sorry to come in while you were speaking, Imran, but yeah.
Oh yes, Pankaj.
No, I was saying that you guys were the first on margin side as well. So again, innovation that happened much before the current generation products. I'd like to continue.
Yeah. Thank you. And we signed up to the whole Ethereum vision, the whole EVM machine, and Vitalik was one of our founding advisors. So I mean, on our side, it is inevitable. It is beyond a doubt the idea that in the future you will have a very seamless, very user-centric decentralized exchange, which is fully on-chain, which is fully seamless, which is fully on-chain, yet performs with superior user experience. Maybe the users won't even know that all the transactions, gas costs, routing, are all under the hood, but they're able to enjoy the fact that they can interact in a non-custodial way, in a permissionless way, in a trustless way, without any intermediaries in between. So I think everyone brings valid points to the table. Just on our side, it's just inevitable that DeFi and decentralized exchange will only gain speed, only gain momentum, because we understand what the Web 2 model is. We understand what the centralized model is. And I think the DeFi and on-chain model is changing every day. And it's going to be completely different 5 years from now in terms of the UI, the UX, the speed, the seamlessness. So it's just inevitable from our point of view.
So on this point of UI,
Thanks.
I would also...
Go ahead, Pankaj. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. If you go back to 2017 and 18, and like Sebastian and Imran were saying that, UXs of decentralized exchanges that time were already quite advanced. And then Uniswap came in the game. It sort of, took an advanced product and took it a little backward, where still a sophisticated product, but with limited information, where you could not see order book, and there was nothing. There was just one nil price that you found, and you have to accept that price. I think the success of Uniswap is not in solving for decentralization, because that was solved much before. You could log into Kyber exchange, log into a bunch of other exchanges. You could put prices in a limit order book. Every time you changed your order or did anything, you would have to release the transaction again, and you had a fully decentralized model. But the problem is not solving just for the product, is also the liquidity, right? So you have to solve for liquidity. And I think what Uniswap did was solve for liquidity very beautifully. It said that if everyone pools their asset on one side, then, and so let's say we are talking about Ethereum USD Tether pair. If everyone pools their Ether, and if everyone pools their USD Tether, now you have a big market maker. A single market maker, but a big market maker who has enough balances of Ethereum and USD Tether. And now they can give you buy or sell any quantity. And that aggregation was very powerful. And this is a model that works on centralized side as well. So if you see banks, this is what they do. They aggregate funds of a customer. So I don't know how many people would have seen. So think of a currency pair in fiat world, which is from a bank. Actually, they are much worse off than brokers, but you can execute very big quantity there, right? So if you go to a bank has enough balances of, say, Singapore dollar and US dollars. And from those balances, they can give you any quantity with a fixed slippage. And that kind of structure Uniswap sort of brought to decentralized markets and solved for liquidity. So user interface technology was solved. What was not solved till 2017 and early 18 was liquidity issue. And they solved the problem by changing the way people were thinking about it. That instead of everyone putting their own orders in order book, you aggregate all the orders. You say this is a pool of Ether, this is a pool of USD Tether, there'll be a price that everyone will get, which is great. And that is why their interface as well, which is great. Because now from a point of view of a big trader, I know this is how much slippage I'm going to get, and that is fine. Because even in the order book, when I take these small orders, I pay that much slippage. So that interface works beautifully for that big trader. And that is what I was saying earlier as well, that look, we have to identify problems, and I don't think this, success of Uniswap is just because it's decentralized, it's successful. It's decentralized, it solved for liquidity on chain, and it gave you a way to do very big quantity trading without much slippage. Today on Curve Finance, you can swap for 100 million of one stable coin with another with a known slippage. You cannot do that on any centralized exchange. That's already a very big victory for decentralized space. So we have to identify and isolate the problems. What are the problems we are solving? And goes back to my original point that maybe custody is one problem which we definitely have to solve. Either a centralized custodian or a decentralized custodian, but like for example, us, Delta, we don't even want to be in a business of holding customer funds. That's not our core business. We are in a business of providing a trading venue. We don't want to sit on customer funds and manage. So we want a good quality custodian, central, decentral, that people trust, that we can trust, which we can use. And if you see, I'm of course speaking from my business, like I said, my businesses or our business is options, and in options you anyway sit on very small amount of assets. For $1 of trading, if a spot exchange is sitting on $2 of asset, in options for $1 of trading, an option exchange only needs to hold 2.5 cents of assets, because one side is, option premiums are much smaller. And you can verify all this from traditional finance as well. That's the behavior there as well. So coming back to the point, what are the problems we are solving? We have to isolate those problems. And even in success of Uniswap, we have to see that why did that success happen when there were already good decentralized products before. And those things define your UX and UI, and the choice of UI UX would rather come from the problem that you're solving and not the other way around. I'll give it back to the host.
All right, thanks, Pankaj. We actually have just another speaker that just joined us, Karan. I'll let him introduce himself and voice his opinion in a short while. Since he has just left us, so I think we have heard a lot from the DEX camp. So as the co-host, I'm just going to throw a wrench into all this debate. I'm just going to jump ship onto the CEX camp, and just going to say, just to make things a bit more interesting, because from what I hear from everyone else so far, I think the main concern everyone has decentralized exchange is that it's a trust issue, basically. And basically, I can actually understand that a lot of us who are actually from the blockchain sphere, from a decentralized world, we, to a certain extent, we are all true believers of Satoshi's original ideals, and we want things to be decentralized. We don't like it to be centralized. We don't want like a third-party central authority that tells us what to do. But having that said, I do believe that if we are able to have a trustworthy person, as long as we are able to establish that trust, it's not easy to get it. Right, but to Cincy's point, some banks are actually centralized authority, but actually most people would not have problems trusting a bank to keeping their money, although that trust has been abused as well in the past. But I would say still close to more than half the population of the world still trust banks more than anyone else to keep their money safe. And as long as in the blockchain sphere, as long as we can establish that trust, all the other benefits that the DEXs have mentioned, right, like fast trading speed, features, and services and all those things. Centralized exchange could do that, right? There's no reason why they can't do that or even do it better, because they can offer more centralized services, customer services. They can offer the features that you talk about. The only problem is establishing the trust. So as long as that trust has been established, and maybe that could be Binance. I don't know, but there's still a lot of fuds going around Binance. So my opinion is that on the CEX camp is that if the regulatory comes in to help build that trust, someone's in business long enough, it might be a case where CEX might be a more pleasing experience to the people, especially given the fact that I think a lot of us are just looking at the DeFi world. But if you want to attract more people from the TradeFi to join in our ranks, maybe CEX is a better bridge to reach out to those people in the TradeFi to come in, right? So that's my opinion on the CEX camp. I just want to very quickly. I think. I think he just dropped off.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's my thought on the CEX camp. I don't know if anyone else in the speaker here want to dispute that, or actually among the audiences, if you have some opinion on you want to speak out, that's great. You can speak out if you will. Yeah. Is there anything else you guys want to add on to this one? If not, we'll actually.
So I have one very quick point, and if the debate was only CEX versus DEX, then trading across the market cycles would be same, right? So customer doesn't start like this, that, okay, today I will trade, and today I will trade on CEX. Today I'll trade on DEX. No. Customer starts by, it's an opportunity to make money by trading. And that brings us back to the original point that, what people are really looking for is a smooth solution where they can, make money by trading. I mean, if you're hedging, you're speculating, whatever you're doing, ultimately you are there to make profits, either on your portfolio or on a position. So I'll, just keep that as a given position. But yeah, the fact that we see more volumes in a bull cycle and less in a bear cycle is in itself a testament that customers' demands are more towards, I am here for something else. I'm not here for an ideological battle. And that is what brings us to the point that, just give me a simple way to trade, and give me a way where I make, don't lose all the money that I brought in. If I lose it while trading, but I should not be losing it because somebody took it or something else happened. And that is how we are solving the problem. That, okay, what are the customer issues and how do we solve for those? So yeah, I just wanted to make that small point that the debate, if it were only CEX versus DEX, market cycles would have seen similar volumes, right? Yes, I think Sebastian was saying something.
Good point. I'll go to Sebastian in a while because I think he has something to say. I just want to add on to this point. Again, I'm just being the devil's advocate. I'm going to throw in some wrench into this debate. To your point, if you're looking purely from a trading point of view, I think most of the serious traders will actually go to centralized exchange. That's just me. That's just me thinking. I might be wrong. Feel free to contradict that. Because a lot of the decentralized exchange, a lot of them still trying to profit from them. Things like through, for example, in GMX case, through their tokens, through some of their liquidity pools, rewards. But if you're talking about, to your point, if you're looking purely from trading and trying to profit from trading, I think a lot of people still prefer centralized exchange merely because they have faster response, they have much better liquidity, and that's just my opinion on it, right? So yeah, I'm just going to quickly just make this remark, and I'm just pass this to Sebastian, I think, which has something to say about this.
Yeah, I would take a counterpoint. So users are forced to centralized exchanges. Users do not want to go to centralized exchanges. Why? Because it's an on-ramp, right? So when you join crypto for the first time, chances are not you got, Bitcoin at an ATM or got Bitcoin as a salary from your friends. You're forced to join an ATM or forced to join a centralized exchange against your will. Nobody wants to do KYC. Like, I've yet to meet one person on the planet that says, this fine evening, I want to do KYC. People are forced to go to a centralized exchange because that's the only on-ramp there realistically is today. And over time, as people mature, I think more and more people are actually migrating away from centralized exchanges because they have worse liquidity, they have definitely worse UX, and people will eventually end up in decentralized exchanges. Like for me, myself, I only trade on centralized exchanges if I need to move money into or out of my bank account. That's the only reason for using centralized exchanges for me at this point. So, and these cyclical movements with people being unfortunately priced out of Ethereum because L2s haven't been delivered in time for the last cycle was pretty unfortunate. But I think for the next cycle that will look different with the advent of especially ZK rollups. So yeah, I'm pretty excited to see that play out. And I would say I would really bet. I'm extremely convinced that the trading volumes in the next bull cycle are significantly bigger on decentralized venues, including L2s, than any centralized exchange can offer. So we've seen it for the first time. I still remember it was a day when Uniswap had trading volume that exceeded Coinbase. So that was pretty wild. I would predict that next bull market, there is not going to be many days when any centralized trading venue that does not just have exclusive wash trading will have larger volumes than decentralized venues. Willing to take a bet on that one.
Okay, wow, thanks, Sebastian. I think everyone can agree this has been like a very intense but very insightful discussion as well. And I'm really learning a lot from each speaker. I wish we could just go on for like 3 days and 3 nights, but that's not possible today. So what we'll do is we will round this up with one last fun and random question for every speaker to answer. Shin, would you do the honors?
Yeah, sure, Dion. So everybody, all the speakers, just a quick price guess for Bitcoin at the end of 2023. Is it going to go below or above 50K? Just for fun, guys. Just take a random guess at this one. So shall we start with Pankaj?
Hi. So I would say somewhere between 30 and 35. That's how I am thinking. But yeah, this year is going to be consolidation. Probably see a high during the year, which is above than that. But I would, between 30 and 35. So certainly below 50.
Sebastian?
Oof, I literally don't care about the price of Bitcoin. I would say definitely under, but I literally don't care.
Cool. It's all right. Just for a bit of fun. Imran?
Same here. I don't really talk about the price movements in general. My sense is that it would be under.
All right, cool. So consensus below 50K. We'll come back in 2024 and see who's right, who's wrong. Just joking.
Okay, thank you so much, guys. We're gonna wrap things up here. Thank you to all speakers. We really appreciate all of you guys and sharing your insight today. No doubt it was a very vibrant discussion, and both Shin and I hope you enjoyed yourself.
Yes, and thank you also to everyone who tuned in. We hope you had a great time. I certainly did. And I hope you guys have learned something new today. But don't forget to follow all our speakers on Twitter, including MarginX, so you know when our next Twitter space will be. So until then, see you again next time. Thank you, everyone.
See you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.